job, not my first full-time job, so it's been a little longer than 20 years actually, was as a student assistant at the Northwest Campus bookstore. That was a long time ago. I'm joking when we say it was in the 1900s, before a lot of you guys were born, or right toward the end of it. And then that's when I first started my academic career in 1992. So what I'm going to talk about today is the 22-year degree plan. I so affectionately call it. Because it did take me 22 years to complete an associate's degree. So that should give some of you hope. How many of you already feel like you've been in school for 22 years? That's what it felt like to me, especially when you're working a full-time job. You already have other responsibilities such as family, work. It may not necessarily be children. It could be siblings. It could be, parents that you have to help take care of, and other responsibilities. So what we're going to talk about is a little bit when the seed was planted. What I thought my higher education plan was going to be, and what it actually turned out to be. My first semester, because, not everybody has it all together when we first start school, and we're just like, just to give you some hope. So if you have had a little bit of a rough start, I did too, and I got it done. And then also I'll just kind of talk about and share about my final destination, and maybe some obstacles and some of the obstacles I went through during those times. First off, I want to talk about the seed. That started when my mom graduated from high school. She was the first of eight of the children that she was in the family with, and only one at the time that completed a high school education. She was the only one that had her high school diploma. So she told my grandfather, I want to go to college. And she grew up in an era where you just went to work, especially in a Hispanic culture. You just got a job. That was what you did. You worked, and you worked hard. So he told her, well, you graduated high school. What more do you want? So just go get a job. So that's what she did. Her dream, though, was to become a radiology technician. And she eventually, as years passed, she ended up becoming a medical assistant. And I thought, I have to commend her because she's one of the most caring people that I've ever met, and selfless people I've ever met. And I could have never done what she had done career-wise. But, and to this day, she'll talk about sex while we're eating, and I'm like, please, Mom, I can't. And she just, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. So, in 1971, I came along. She raised me as a single parent and always instilled in me, even as a little girl, about college. She used to ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? And I would tell her, I want to be a doctor. And she asked me, well, why do you want to be a doctor? I said, because I want to help people. I want to make people better. I want to help them. And so she said, well, you have to go to college for that. And I'm like, okay. I had no idea what college was. I was like, okay, I guess sure. So she planted that seed. So that seed was always there. And I always knew college was something that you should do. So this was a picture, one of my favorite pictures of my mom is her high school graduation picture. And it sits in my living room. And on those, she doesn't know this, but on those hard days that I didn't feel like studying, I got off of work late, and then I had to have presentations all day at high schools, and then I'd go to class until 9 o'clock at night, and I'd come home, she'd be in there making the tortillas. I'd walk in the house, and it smelled like tortillas. I'm like, oh my God, 9 o'clock at night, Mom, do you know how much weight I'm going to gain? So not only did I gain a degree, I gained a few pounds too. So she doesn't realize this picture would motivate me, because I knew that had she gotten to do what she wanted to do, and that desire that I had to, that was my sacrifice. I honored her by doing that. I wanted to do that. I wanted to make her proud. So this is what I thought would happen, okay? I thought I would graduate high school, go to TCU, yay, go Frogs, right? Join a sorority, have all the fun, that you hear about, and get your little, whatever those things are called, your letters, your Greek letters. and then get a great job, and then live happily ever after, right? Well, this is what actually happened. I got pregnant in August of 1989, just my senior year of high school. I had my son 3 weeks before my high school graduation, so I was home on maternity leave for 2 weeks before I had to go back to school. I was even told and called in by the nurse when I found shortly after the word got out that I was expecting, and she called me into her office and said, and she was a Hispanic lady, and I think she meant well, but I don't think that she knew the impact she had on me and my self-esteem at that moment. She suggested that I go to New Life High School for pregnant teenager moms, completing high school. And I told her no, I didn't want to. I wanted to stay where I was. Oh, but it'll be better for you, it'll be healthier. And really, you just don't want to be another, Hispanic girl pregnant in high school. So needless to say, my hero came to my rescue. My mom came to the school, talked to the nurse, and said, my daughter will not be told and made to feel like she does not deserve to be in the high school that she's in. So I completed my high school education with the support of 2 of my teachers, Coach Grant and Mrs. Woods, who ended up dating and getting married. I had one for geography, one for economics, and they took me to my senior prom that I was not going to go to because I was 8 months pregnant. And they talked me into going, so I went last minute, got a dress, kind of hard to hide, but I found a cute one. So I went to my high school prom, I did all that, enjoyed it, and then here comes, this bundle of joy at 18 years old, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So about a year later, my mom's like, you really need to figure out what you got to do. I worked part-time, was still living at home. My mom was a great support. I had my little one. His dad and I were kind of off and on. So I finally decided to go back to school, and that's when I started working there at the bookstore part-time. I was on campus, but I still just didn't get it. So this is what my first semester looked like. It's really good, huh? So I took psychology, intro to psych. I made a C. That's average, yeah. And by the way, it's ironic because I did not apply for financial aid. Number one, because it was difficult, and my mom said, oh, well, we won't qualify anyway. So I never even applied for financial aid, so I paid out of pocket for my first few semesters. So, intro to math. Math was the thorn in my side. I didn't absolutely hate it, I just didn't do it really well. So, I got through math eventually, and then I had my second semester, and again, I passed a developmental English class, and I think WP, I'm not quite sure what that means. Like I said, it was in the 1900s. I think that means I withdrew, but I'm not real sure. But anyway, as you can see, I continued off and on during 2013. Up until 2003. And the reason why is because I had a lot of obstacles. I became a wife and mother, the father of my son, and I finally decided to get married. And then we had 2 more children, 2 more sons. That I'm very proud of, and they're my motivation. They keep me going on those days that I don't want to go anymore. I also started working full-time. So not only was I a mom, a wife, I was a full-time employee, and growing up Hispanic, even though you worked, you still maintained most of the housework and the children. That's traditional. So I didn't always have to do the lawn, but I would help occasionally. But my job was to go to work, come home, cook dinner, help the kids with the homework, get them ready for the next day, iron their clothes, get his lunch ready, and make sure his clothes were ironed and pressed and ready to go for the next day. Then do what I needed to do for myself and put myself in bed. Always the first to wake up, last to go to bed. So then things kind of started, going south in my marriage. There was emotional abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse that I lived through for 9 years. Then I decided, this is the cycle I do not want to continue for my kids. This is not what I want my children to grow up to be. So I had to get out. And for those of you who may, because it can be male or female. It doesn't always have to be a female going through domestic violence. Sometimes it happens the other way around. And you don't have to stay in those situations. It's scary getting out, but once you get out and you get through those valleys of, can I make it by myself? Am I strong enough to do this without the other person? Am I courageous enough to make it happen? Or, am I going to be able to take care and provide for my kids by myself? Am I doing the right thing? Because, kids are supposed to grow up with two parents. All those questions, but I did it anyway. At some point, after 9 years, I said enough was enough. When I had to, and this is something I don't share very often, but I'm going to share it today. The last straw for me was when I ended up going to jail myself for self-defense. So it was at that moment that and my youngest son was 6 weeks old. And I thought, you know what? I could spend the rest of my life in prison and never get to know my son. So it was at that moment that was a pivotal moment in my life when I made a decision to leave that marriage. Because it was, my children at that time became more important to me. So becoming a single parent was a struggle, was an obstacle. Then, on top of that, I ended up with a very rebellious teenager. And that's taking it lightly. He was in and out of juvenile detention. And it wasn't for, he just had a really bad temper. And part of that I can't blame him for. But, like I always tell him, we control how we want to react. Regardless of what our circumstances were, we choose who we're going to be. So if you choose to stay angry, and you choose to have those outbursts, and you choose to do these things, then you choose the consequences that come with it. You deal with it. So he does. Rarely does he ever call mom for help. He doesn't call mom for money. He might call me for a ride once in a while and just disguise it under, hey mom, you want to go to lunch? Sure, okay. Well, of course I have to pick him up. He has no vehicle. So he'll take me to lunch and, oh, by the way, you want to go to the mall? I'm like, oh, so that's what that was about. But I love him to death. Wouldn't change the world. Wouldn't change anything about him. Maybe a couple things. But he's, he made it very difficult because I did attempt to go to school while they were young and by myself. As a single parent, I still had to help with my mom. But when you have a rebellious teenager that's getting in trouble in school constantly, you don't even want to answer the phone at work when you see it's Saginaw High School. You're like, don't want to answer it. But I did. Okay, so why did I allow some of these obstacles to become obstacles? Well, I'll be honest with you. A big part of it was the lack of confidence I had in myself. I thought that I wasn't smart enough. I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't even think I was capable enough. I'm thinking, I worked in higher education and I see all of my colleagues who have degrees and, seem to have it all together. And I'm thinking, I'm not any of those things. That's not how I grew up. I didn't get to go to college right out of high school. I didn't have parents that, a lot of my colleagues grew up in two-parent homes, and some of them single-parent homes, but their parents went to college. Their parents had those experiences. They were able to help them through those experiences. So I didn't have the confidence. But through some personal growth, eventually I gained the confidence to be able to go back. Years ago, I would not be able to stand up here and talk to you without feeling like this and my voice shaking because I would be so nervous. But now, through the confidence of my Mary Kay business, which helped to provide for myself and my children during times when I wasn't receiving child support, I was working and I'm essentially working 2 jobs. So I worked 2 jobs. During that time in my Mary Kay business is when I had a lot of personal growth. I learned to believe in myself. My director believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. And then I got to a point where, you know what, I can do this. I'm making this happen for myself. So with every little small success I had in my Mary Kay business, my confidence and my self-esteem grew. I went to counseling. I went to some very intense counseling back in the early 2000s. And this is another thing I don't often share, but so many people are affected by this and don't tell anybody that the statistics, honestly, are not real, are not accurate. I was sexually abused as a child, which led me into a relationship where I was physically, mentally, and verbally abused because I didn't think my self-worth was there. I had no self-worth. So I didn't think I was valuable. I thought this was good enough for me. This is all I was able to, this is all I deserved. So I went through my counseling with a very sweet, old grandpa-like man, and it was very intense. I didn't want to be there some days, but I got through it. And it was through that I was able to heal some old wounds. And I can now talk about those things, and they don't hurt me or affect me like they used to. Now I use them to help other people, to bring other people some hope, to bring them some hope that they too are valuable and can do the things that they want to do, that that your hopes and dreams can happen, your desires, your goals can happen, if and things like that can't hold you back. So I eventually went back to school, decided, okay, it's time to get this education done. I was watching all my friends get their degrees and all of that, and I'm like, okay, it's time to get this done. Plus, there were job positions that I wanted to apply for, but I couldn't because I had no degree. So here I go. I went my last and final attempt. I'm like, I'm gonna give it the good old college try one more time. So in spring of 2010, I started back to school. I was a little stronger, a little more confident, and I had a deep desire to finish because I wanted my son. I was finally ready, and I knew and I realized I needed to change the legacy of my family, because if I wasn't going to do it, nobody else was going to. And I didn't want it to go another generation without changing. So that was one of the key factors that made me go back to finish something I had started years ago. What did I do differently this time? Well, number one, I made my education my priority. Outside of my work and my children, my family, the only other thing that I had made time for was my education. So that meant no social life for a while. And that's only because I was working a full-time job. If I wasn't working full-time, maybe I could have fit in a little social life in there. But my sisters, my good friends, and the ones that I spent, my small circle that I spent most of my time with, knew that once August 31st came and December 15th, I was unavailable. They'd check on me once in a while, and they might, call me, Facebook me, however we communicated, but they didn't ask me to go anywhere until after they knew my semester was over, because they knew that I was that dedicated to my education. And sometimes that's what it takes. I missed a lot of family functions, a lot of birthday parties, a lot of get-togethers, because I was home doing homework. I'd send my kids with my mom. When I take the kids, I missed out on a lot. But you know what? I made that short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain. Because that long-term gain now is that my window of opportunity for career, for jobs, has opened. Because now, jobs that I didn't have available to me before, because I didn't have that degree, are now available to me. So, and I also, while I was on campus, took advantage of the resources. The writing lab was my best friend. The math tutoring lab was my best friend. I loved it. I took advantage of the fact that they were all free here, because a lot of colleges and universities you have to pay for tutoring. So, and most importantly, I stayed committed. It's hard to stay committed, especially when you're having to work and you're having to provide and you're having to clean house. And you can ask my kids, Saturday was a ritual day. We got up every morning, Mom had her coffee, did her Bible study, the kids ate cereal and watched cartoons for a little while, and they knew as soon as I was done with those two things, it was time to clean the house. We cleaned that sucker from top to bottom, scrubbed corners, baseboards, everything. And then I got to where I was getting overwhelmed while I was going to school and trying to do that and all that. And then my mentor and therapist said, Christina, how important is it to clean the house every single Saturday? I said, but Dr. Dan, that's just what we do. I'm like, do you not realize I'm a routine person? If I get out of my routine, then life is just not right. And he's like, but is being in a routine more important than your sanity and your stress level? And I'm like, well, so now we clean it maybe once every 6 months. And I think my boys kind of, the two that are still at home, they appreciate that. And when I talk about my legacy, this is my legacy here. These are my 3 boys. I affectionately refer to them as my 3 kings. They have been my reason to get up in the morning on those days I was dead tired. They were my reason to stay up studying. I've stayed up a couple of times for 24 hours straight doing homework because on a Thursday night, and luckily that was my last semester of school, I'd get off on Thursdays because y'all know we go to the 4-day work week. I'd get off on Thursday, go home, start reading and doing homework assignments, and I had to get all of my quizzes done because for some reason, this one professor, and I had her for both classes, decided she wanted to make all her quizzes and tests due by noon on Friday. I'm like, woman, don't you know we have full-time jobs? Luckily I'm not at work on Friday. So I would get home, put my hair in a ponytail, put on my pajamas, and plant myself at the kitchen table. And I remember a couple of times my son coming out of his room, my youngest son coming out of his room, and 5 o'clock in the morning, you're still up? I'm like, yeah, I'm almost done though, so don't bother me. And so I did that because I knew I wanted to go to bed, and I didn't want to have to worry about getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning and stressing for 4 hours to make sure I got all my quizzes done. So this is my legacy right here, and this is what they look like now. And I tell them all the time, in my mind and in my heart memory, this is how old they are for the rest of their life. And this is them now. This one finally got a haircut. This one does music, and this one served in our Marine Corps for 4 years, and these 2 are now students at Tarrant County College. So the legacy has already started to change, and now I know that from generation to generation, college is going to be just the norm for them and their kids. The final destination was the completion of my 22-year degree plan. Okay? So this should give you hope. This was just my 2-year degree, and it took me 22 years to complete. So I finally obtained my associate's degree in May of 2013. And along with that, I completed a certificate of mental health social work. There's my degree. It still sits in the little portfolio in a shelf at home. People ask me, how come you haven't hung it up? I'm like, those frames are expensive. They're expensive, but it didn't stop there. I kept going. I completed my, I went ahead and transferred and started Tarleton State University in fall of 2013, continued to go on, and these are the nights that I spent 24 hours awake during the summer to finish, because I was like 2 classes away in the summertime. I'm like, I got to do this. I don't want to do another semester. I'm done. So here we go. I finally got it, and there it is, my bachelor's degree, and that was the best feeling. And remember that rebellious teenager? This is a funny story. You'd appreciate it if he was here. He might be a little bit upset for me sharing this. Well, guess where he was whenever I walked across the stage? We say he was on vacation. We'll just say that. He wasn't there, but when I took him my degree, he was in tears. And he said, you know, he said, you worked hard for that. And I remember going home to the house and you'd be awake at 2 o'clock in the morning studying. And I'm like, yeah, I did. I said, but I didn't do it for me, I did it for y'all. And I did it for his kids because he's got 2 little boys. So I share my story to give you hope, because a lot of the times I think we get caught up in, oh, it's taken me so long, oh, I'm embarrassed to tell people, oh, this is my 5th attempt at college, or my 4th. Just so you know, it took me 4 attempts to get through intermediate algebra. And I celebrated, just so you know. And then I didn't figure out my learning style for math until my last week of college algebra, which I aced my final exam and failed every other exam before that. It's crazy. So luckily I passed enough to be able to complete that. So I share that with you guys because, and like our Mr. Acevedo talked about, writing became his outlet, his healing process. I write, and that's how my blog got started. Because I write from my personal experiences, I write from my heart, I write from my feelings. And so I share those feelings because a lot of the times, people don't know how to express what they're feeling. They're either too shy, they're too scared, they're too embarrassed. And sometimes when you read what somebody else has gone through and what somebody else has overcome, you think, you know what? I'm not the only one. If she can do this, I can do this. Or if he can do this, I can do this. So I started my blog, which is called A Diva's Diary, because I love shoes. And all my, over the years, my friends have referred to me as the shoe diva. So now my grandkids call me diva. And it's not by conceitedness by any means, but I needed a name for my blog. I had no idea what I was going to name it, so one of my friends says, why don't you call it A Diva's Diary? I'm like, that is so cute. I like that. So that's where I write stories. I wrote about my 22-year degree plan. I wrote about when I finally finished that 4-year degree. I write about when my kids are all grown and gone, and the empty nest has just, I'm an empty nester. My youngest son is in college. They're now no longer my children so much as they are now my roommates, messy ones at that. But, they're great. It's, having adult children and being able to laugh with them about our past experiences and our struggles, and we're like thinking about where we were then and where we are now. All of that is in a lot of those stories are in my blogs, and I invite you to read, share, whatever. Even share with me your stories. I like to hear about other people. Does anybody have questions? Yes, ma'am.
So after when you shared your bachelor's degree with your son, did that change him?
It changed him in the fact that he's a musician. He tried to do the college thing, and college is not for everybody, and it's true. He is very much a musician. He's an artist. He has a different, I think, respect for college now. He used to be, you don't need to get a degree to be rich. I'm like, but that's not what it's about. It's about an accomplishment. I think eventually, even though he doesn't see it, I see it, I think eventually he will go back to school. Because he's smart. He used to irritate me. He'd look over my shoulder when I'm doing college algebra, tell me the answer without having to do the formula. And he dropped out of high school and got a GED. I'm like, go figure. I'm sitting here struggling and you're killing me. Get out of here. Any other questions? Well, thank you. And again, I encourage you to just keep plugging, you know, stay committed, and get it done.
Thank you. One thing you want to write in your notebook is one of her sayings, and I liked it because it says, don't let your routine affect your sanity. That happens to too many people. Christina was also actively involved, is actively involved with an organization called TACHE, which is Texas Association of Chicanos in Higher Education, and they grew this from virtually no people in our district to how many now, 300 or 400?
Now, as far as actual active members, we have 60.
Okay, a lot of people from before.
And in the state, we have almost 400 members.
Okay. Questions for her before she leaves? Everybody's good? Thank you so much. Appreciate it.